Dr. Jason Cassibry. He is a professor in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Again, Jason, it's an honor to have you here tonight and talk about these different subjects.
Oh, likewise. I'm having a lot of fun this evening.
Well, that's what it's all about, without a doubt. If we could kind of segue, and I was glad to see that in your notes that you sent to me in the email, as far as being willing to talk about aliens and Bigfoot and UFOs and ufology, I think it's something that most people that are in your line of work, at least for propulsion systems design, or people that work with NASA. Or in the space program, UFOs and the potential of alien technology. It's the dreams. It's what science is there for. It's what we push toward. What are your thoughts on all of that, Jason? I mean, do you believe in aliens? Do you think we're here alone?
No, actually, I don't. I know. I guess some people might be reluctant to talk about that because if you say too much, then you can lose credibility with people that can fund your research. So you have to, I suppose, temper what you say a little bit. But I mean, I don't see why, because, so the Kepler mission gave us the odds on how many planets or how many stars have planets, and it looks like most stars have planets around them. And then, so if you're just referencing the Drake equation, okay, so that's one down, then how many of those have habitable planets? How many of those habitable planets, support life, et cetera, et cetera? The odds are staggeringly in favor of life developing, and the likelihood that we were the first to get this smart, I would say is pretty low. I wouldn't be surprised if there were lots of races of beings that come and visit once in a while, and I wouldn't be surprised if all of that was governed in some way, whether the travel or if there's some sort of government of sorts, if you can call it that. I don't see why there couldn't be. Right.
Well, I know in my lifetime I have seen a couple things and I've said this several times on the show. I have seen two things in my lifetime that if they are of this world, we have got some unbelievable technology, and if they are not, whoever came here with these things, they do have some unbelievable technology. But when you go down to here in Utah, of course, we get out to the desolate parts of the desert. At night you get away from the city lights on a moonless night, and you lean back in a lawn chair on a clear night and look up, and you can actually see galaxies with the naked eye, and these, the clusters of stars, and you gotta look out there and say that man, if we're the only ones, it's gotta, we can't be, but if we are, what a waste. It's just amazing to look up to the stars and see what's out there. The velocity, the magnitude of it, I guess, is really the word I'm looking for.
So you mentioned that you had a couple of experiences. If you don't mind me asking you a question, what did you see?
Well, I two UFO sightings. I'm a Chicago native, and back in 1986, summer of '86. Long story short, I was cutting my mom. We had a lot of rainstorms for about a week, and I was cutting my mom's lawn. It was so heavy I had to cut it, and then I figured I'd come back the next day and cut it again. It was just crazy, out of control high. And I remember her coming out and yelling at me, saying, "Hey, when you're done cutting it, you haven't bagged it. Make sure you sweep up the sidewalk," because the grass was all over the place. And a friend of mine stopped by, and it was helping me sweep up, and just kind of standing there leaning on the broom. We were talking, and we saw this object come across the sky from the west to the east. Thought it was an airplane at first. Stopped. I can't tell you how big it was or small it was. It was out quite a ways, but it actually stopped, and then it shot off on a 45-degree angle into, all I could say is, infinity, and it was just a burst, and it was gone. And we both kind of looked at each other and said, did I just think, did we just see what we thought we saw? It kind of went back to sweeping up again, but I know that at least to my knowledge, I don't think we have any aircraft on this planet that can do something like that. That can shoot off at the velocity was just unbelievable. It was just gone. It came across, hovered, and then pop, it was gone. I couldn't believe what I saw. The second thing I saw here was in Salt Lake City. This is back in 1998. Saw a craft come over the West Mountains here in the Salt Lake Valley. We've got the Wasatch Front, and that's the back end of the Rocky Mountain chain. That's where it stops. The Rocky Mountains actually stop here in Salt Lake City. We've got the Salt Lake Valley, and then we've got the Oquirrh Mountain Range, which are those mountains are around 9,000 feet. And a craft, the size just blows me away, but it came over the top of these mountains, heading from the south to the north, banked off to the northwest, which was absolutely monumental in size, made no noise. I drew it on paper 30 times trying to get reference points to see how big it was, because it was hard to determine how big it was, but it was just massive. And I know that it was real because it was a moonless night, but the stars did cast a shadow, and as this thing moved across the top of the Oquirrh Mountains, as it was above the Oquirrh Mountains, I could see the shadow that it cast down. And then after it moved on, it was so large and immense. I was probably 6-7 miles away from it. I could feel the air getting displaced and then rushing back in again.
Wow.
And no, I wasn't drinking or smoking anything or crazy. My biggest fear, Jason, is that the Salt Lake City International Airport is straight due north, and I just kept thinking it wasn't like, oh my God, this is a UFO. I just thought to myself, this thing is massive, and it was early in the morning, right after about 1 a.m., and I thought, my biggest fear was that airliners would hit this thing because it was so huge. I thought about going to picking up the phone and saying, hey, did you see something that probably ate up half of your radar board? But I thought, well, they're going to think I'm crazy. So I just let it go. And being that, a lot of people, I told several people this story. It was on a weeknight. It was a Thursday night. And when I told them this story, they said, well, I don't know, you probably were imagining it because, there's surveillance cameras and stuff. Yeah, but surveillance cameras don't look up in the air. I mean, they look down on the ground, They look in, security cameras and stuff are making sure that us two-legged humans aren't doing nothing crazy, but nothing looking up in the air. But just, I know what I saw. I'm not crazy. I know I saw it. It was spectacular, and I wish it would come back. Looked like a giant arrow. Looked like a giant, one of those arrows they use for deer hunting that have the razors, the 4 razors. It looked like something similar to that, but just ginormous in size.
Moved like nothing you'd ever seen,
right.
I'm sure.
No noise at all either. Not 1 ounce of noise. But where I knew it was real, it was a dead calm night, and the air actually displaced. I could feel it push away and then pull itself back as it moved, and that was 6-7 miles away. So I knew it was moving at a tremendous speed, and it had to be tremendously huge, tremendously large.
I'm incredibly jealous of you for that experience. That would have been a lot of fun to have the story and to feel it. That's not something I've heard before. That's really neat.
Well, I like I said, maybe it's we're not that far from the infamous Area 51. Of course, Dugway Proving Grounds are straight west of where we are. You've got 2 mountain ranges. You've got the Wasatch Valley here. You got the Oquirrh Mountains. Then you've got the Tooele, Grantsville area, another set of mountain ranges, and then you are into Dugway Proving Grounds, which consumes a major chunk of the state of Utah. I don't know. Was it of this world? Maybe it was. Maybe it was some sort of huge craft. But it was so immense. I would love to see where this thing would land.
I would too. That's really interesting. My own story pales by comparison. I like to stargaze. I'm not an astronomer by any stretch, but I like to go out and stare at the sky, and just find satellites once in a while, or meteors, comet once every 5 or so years. But so I was outside one night. I think this was in '94 in the spring. And I was on campus at University of Missouri Rolla, and I was just looking up like I do in the evenings, and I know what a meteor looks like. I know what a satellite looks like, and this was going from east to west, and it just had this dull blue glow to it, and it was going faster than a satellite in the wrong direction, faster than an airplane, and it wasn't an aircraft. I would have heard something, and it wobbled, and it wasn't quick like a meteor, because those are just like real quick streaks and it's gone. It was just this little dull blue glow, and it just went from east to west, and I could watch it for about 30 seconds. And on its trajectory, it just kind of would wobble like every few seconds, like it wasn't completely being controlled right, or they were just having fun or something. And that was my one and only experience with something like that.
Well, I mean, but that's still, I mean, it obviously, I've here especially. If you sit back at night on a moonless night, and if it's late and a lot of the lights are off, it's amazing when you lean back and look up, Jason, how many satellites you see. I mean, there's tons of them that are coming over all the time, and usually it's like you got to you could be sitting there with somebody and say, hey, do you see that? And when you got so many stars out, it's tough. You've got to be able to just pick it up at the right time and see it at the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
But I hope to see more. I couldn't, I don't know what these things were. This craft was just, again, ginormous is the only word I could come up with for it. Huge. It had some sort of a propulsion system on the back. It made no noise, though. It was very quiet. But it was almost like it was levitating, if you will, but yet moving very fast. It went from the south end of the valley to the north end of the valley, which I would estimate is probably around 30 miles, that I could see maybe 40 miles, and it covered that amount of terrain in a matter of seconds and was gone.
Wow.
and turned off to the northwest. Just unbelievable. And then again, back home, seeing that little light or whatever that was come across and then shoot up, pop off like that. It was just crazy. When you do your work, and we got a bunch more questions that came in, and I will get to those. I promise the listeners we will. When you do your work, and again, it's got to be kind of a touchy subject. Again, talking about ufology, especially when you're looking for research money, they don't want to have someone who's not that many years ago you talked about it and they want to put you in a straitjacket. Now people are being more open about it. But what do you think about these advanced propulsion systems? How do you think they work? Do you think that if you follow any of the work of Bob Lazar, I think he talks about, was it element 135 or something that's not of this planet? But what do you think about these propulsion systems, or what they could be?
Well, my guess is that you probably generate currents in the right configuration, at the right harmonics, in the right mass to get some kind of weird resonant effect that distorts space-time in an efficient way. And exactly the details of that, I have no idea. I think that if it were something easy, somebody would have found it already. And who knows, maybe at Area 51 they're doing that. But I really don't have much idea about that, other than just whatever I read, online. People like Bob Lazar. Did you ever interview Riley Martin?
No, I have not.
He is a hoot to talk to. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yes, the name is familiar.
Yeah, so he had a show on the Sirius network, and I actually came across him. He did some local radio talk show here, had him on, and he was talking about the Biavians, I think was his race, that he was their favorite for some reason, and they would pick him up. And for, let's see, if you buy his book, he'll tell you all about them and the other races. And then also, this is the thing that was most intriguing, was that if the Earth was going to end in 2012, if you bought one of these symbols that he drew that were downloaded to his brain, that you would be spared. That was your ticket off the planet for $35 or something. And the guy, you could tell, didn't have a lot of money. And I thought, oh boy, that's a good story. And hey, who knows? That's pretty cheap to save your life.
Right.
So I bought one. So I bought one of these things, and I got to know him a little bit. I mean, he's a very entertaining man to talk to. I don't know if he's still around or not, but I got to chat with him and found out that he had some secrets on their propulsion system. And so I talked him into telling me about that. And so, he doesn't have an education, beyond seventh grade or something like that. But when he started describing this, he talked not about the propulsion itself, but the power, which he said was a hydrogen-fed fusion core. And then he gave me the details. And at the time, so this is maybe 10 years ago, at the time, I didn't really have enough understanding of all the different reactions that take place between fission and fusion and so on and so forth to really fully appreciate it. But I've since studied other things and then remembered those because I took notes on. I kept a few notes, and it's actually kind of interesting, some of the overlap between some of the things that we're looking at now and some of the things that he told me. So who knows?
Well, exactly. And, I mean, there's just sometimes when you start, I think that when we start hearing about some of these, you listen to different ufologists and different researchers, and then again, supposedly some people that have made contact and seem to be somewhat in the know. Again, I don't know if it's just wishful thinking or it's their fantasy come true, but maybe some of these very simple ideas, maybe we got to look at the whole. We've got to kind of look at the whole equation. We got to kind of look at the whole picture to figure some of this stuff out. And maybe it's really simpler than we really think it is.
It probably is. It's kind of a gut instinct, or maybe it's faith or something. But I believe that it's possible, and I believe we're going to figure it out. And you're probably right. It's probably screaming at us. We're just not listening to the right scream to figure it out.
Exactly. Let me get a couple questions off to you that our listeners just sent in. It says, does Dr. Cassibry know if Robert Zubrin is still pushing his ideas in Congress, etc., regarding his ideas on a Mars expedition and exploration?
I haven't ever had the pleasure of speaking with him, but I've kind of been at some of the same conferences and seeing him at a distance and all of that. And I believe he's still actively pushing for that Mars expedition. A lot of people are. He's definitely been one of the champions contributing to that.
Very good. Another question is should we be sending more probes to Europa to look underneath the ice sheet into its oceans? And if you have any thoughts on a trip to Europa?
Yes, I think that 2 or 3 of the Galilean satellites have a subsurface ocean. Europa is the best known one, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ganymede does, or Callisto, or no, Callisto is the Saturn moon, isn't it? I'm showing my meager knowledge on the subject, but a couple of those moons have subsurface oceans, and I think that would be one of the more intriguing missions that we could do, because it's a hard mission, so a lot of technology would have to get developed, and that's always a good thing for us to make those kinds of investments. And anywhere where there's liquid water, why wouldn't we want to look under the surface and find that out? I have a feeling that a lot of places that we think are inhospitable probably have some form of life. I mean, we have 2 worms living next to hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were at least bacteria in the subsurface of Mars somewhere, and I'm not sure if there are complex life in Europa, but I mean, if there's any type of energy at all, and the fact that there's liquid water, I'm sure there's something there.
Yeah, I actually had a chance to, I don't know if you're a big sci-fi buff, but I assume you are. I had a chance to watch this movie called Europa Report the other night.
Oh.
It was interesting. I won't give away the ending, but that's exactly what it was about, was to drill into the ice and find out what was underneath it. So it was kind of the film had the feel of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I'm not sponsored by those people by any means, but if you want to watch something cool, Europa Report. It just hit Redbox a couple of days ago. Kind of interesting. Another question was, says, Doctor, do you believe that we might have got some of our technology from other beings by possibility? I mean, some of the things that I think what she's asking is the technology, the things that you're working on today, could it have been our, this group, you and your group, and scientists like you, could this be some inherited knowledge, if you will, or inherited thoughts that were given to you years and years ago, maybe lifetimes before, that have all put you and your students and your coworkers and colleagues in the same room to try to come up with a solution for us?
Well, the universe works in strange ways. It's the stuff that we're working on can be traced all the way back to folks like Einstein, who kind of recognized the significance of nuclear reactions and the energy that comes out and all of that. And it's just been a very slow, incremental process. But there have been some extraordinary leaps in technology in various fields, and there are some people that have worked in very high places that have come out and claimed that, in fact, some of our technology was derived or augmented by recovered technology or shared knowledge. I think the most famous one is probably Colonel Corso. I don't know if you're familiar with that guy or not, but he wrote a really intriguing book on that very subject. I think his name was Robert Corso. Anyway, he has a good book on that. And then our very first well-documented civilization, the Sumerians, claimed that gods from the sky basically taught them, government and community and math and science, and basically all of this knowledge was handed to them. So there seems to be some evidence, if you are open to it, to suggest that that's a possibility. I've always kind of wondered myself, why am I so drawn and pushed to do fusion propulsion all the time? I mean, it's certainly a fun thing. It's not a job that somebody with a weak stomach should do because it's a lot of work, and there's no clear end in sight. You just have to keep working at it and filter out. When you have detractors or people that criticize, even within your own field, are critical. I mean, you just use that and learn from it to make you better, and you keep going.
Right.
And then there's this always in this back of my head, there's probably something else much better out there than what we're doing, and that could scoop everything. Like you mentioned earlier, do you think if we'll have a warp drive in our lifetime? And part of me would be so excited. Of course, who wouldn't want us to have that in society? Because I do not have any desire to get on a rocket, but I'd be first in line on a warp drive craft. I mean, it would just be so fun to do that. But
Sure.
at the same time, oh shoot, there goes my career.
Right.
Now what am I going to do?
Do you ever go to bed at night and wake up at 2-3 in the morning and you start thinking about this stuff?
Sometimes, I certainly do. If I go to, especially if I'm up late working on something that really is hot, I've got to get it done right away. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and think, oh, I really should try this, or I should, do it this way. And I keep that stuff to myself because I don't know how to turn it off very well,
Right,
and
right.
that drives my poor wife crazy.
Got a couple other questions. Actually, we've got a group of students that listen to our show on Saturday nights, especially up at the University of Utah. And Tracy writes in, and she just sent an email, and she says, Dr. Cassibry, can you tell us, she's a math major up at the U, but would like to get into aeronautical engineering and maybe even the aerospace field or something like you're doing in propulsion development. What advice do you give to a college student that's she's a sophomore right now? What advice do you give to someone like her?
Well, that's a very good question, and I'm happy to answer that. So, having a math background is very, very good for going into engineering, and we benefit greatly from people that have basically a strength in math, because while all engineers are good at math by comparison to the rest of the population, even within that, there's a lot of advanced work that really demands more out of people than the usual trig and algebra and some calculus that engineers do. And so it would be fantastic to have people like her to contribute. So for practical strategy, she might want to consider either a dual major or going to grad school. She will probably need to take a select few undergraduate courses that would serve as the prerequisites for the grad courses that she would take to kind of help, provide her the background that she would need for the, for the engineering courses that she would take. But having a math major, that's a good foundation for her.
Very, very good. Another question for you is, why is Venus ignored for the most part? It's always been the Moon or Mars or Europa or Titan. What about our sister planet next door to us, virtually the same size, etc.? It is hot, of course, but do we have the technology to explore it more thoroughly?
That's a good question. We really don't send that many probes there, and I think it's because it's so inhospitable for life. So for science sake, it's interesting to go there, and we have sent a few probes. But Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system, so that definitely poses a set of challenges. I guess I don't really have a good answer other than it's just so stinking hot there. We might take some chemical measurements and learn a little bit about the thermodynamics of the planet, but and the geology. But we spend a lot of money on that without any hope of finding life or whatever. But I don't know. We don't seem to be drawn to Venus so much. So it's hard to say why.
I think we've sent a probe or two there, haven't we?
I think so. I think we've I know that we've sent one. We've sent a couple to Mercury. And
maybe that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like the Mariner probe went to Mercury, and I thought we had one recently, like in the last 3 or 4 years, that did some mission there, and I can't remember what it was. And Cassini did a flyby of Venus in order to help it get out to Saturn more quickly. So we've kind of gotten near it, but we haven't. I don't know that we've done a lot of science with Venus. I'd have to look back at the history to see.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Fringe Radio. Jason, that's one of my favorite shows, the Jupiter 2 and Lost in Space. Was that one of yours when you were younger?
I did enjoy that one, yes.
And for people here in Salt Lake, and just put a plug in on MeTV tonight at 11 o'clock locally. They're playing it every Saturday night. So if you like the old campy stuff, it's out there. I think it's so great that we could talk about all these different subjects and your open-mindedness on ufology and some of this other stuff, because I've had different researchers on the program over the years, and some of them just won't even go that way. We've had a couple of NASA payload specialists on, and it's kind of interesting. They won't even you talk UFO or you talk about anomalies on the Moon or Mars, and wow, they steer clear of it. But I appreciate you being open to all this type of stuff. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So this is the Fringe show. I mean, what would you expect? And I think there's a better likelihood that you'll meet an alien than we'll break even in fusion in the near term. So,
maybe. I mean, it would be interesting to see what type of propulsion it is, because, again, if you can believe the likes of a Bob Lazar and some of these other people that have claimed they've seen the technology, maybe we do have the technology. Who knows? It would surely be a shame. When we talk about disclosure and all this stuff, it would surely be a shame that if there was a technology out there that could get us to the stars safely. We're not taking advantage of it. It would be a shame if that type of thing is not happening.
Yeah, I know. So you kind of have to wonder if we have it, if it's being kept under wraps, and if we do have it, why aren't we using it? Or is it just all something that we want to believe in, but we don't have the secrets yet? It's hard to say.
Exactly. Carl sent in a question for you. It says, Jason, I think he's just a long email here. I think I'm going to condense it. It says that ammonia is used in the International Space Station. Is Jason aware it was with some of the thruster systems used, like in Apollo, was liquid ammonia used for these type of rocket engines?
I am not aware that ammonia was used that way. It could have been, but I'm actually not aware of that one. I know that ammonia is a good propellant for certain plasma propulsion systems, just having to do with the way it breaks down when you drive an arc through it, a big current. But in terms of its use on Apollo and the space program, I wasn't aware of that, so I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, it said it. Well, one thing on the doing a little bit of digging here, it said that the ISS uses ammonia. It's used as a coolant for their solar arrays, is what it's used for.
Okay, yeah. Well, in that respect, I mean, it's a refrigerant, so you can use it for heat pumps and air conditioning and probably radiators and things like that. It's got good properties for that. So maybe that's what Apollo was using it for.
Maybe that's what he was thinking about. Okay, now I found something interesting, and I want you to talk about this if you could. This without a doubt I think will interest all of our listeners. I came across an article that says 2013 Starship Congress Speaker announcement, Dr. Jason Cassibry, estimate of vehicle requirements for an Alpha Centauri flyby in 50 years. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was, I think, an abstract I wrote as part of Project Icarus. And so this is a very enthusiastic international group of people. And I got involved in it because of one of my graduate students, Mila Stanic, who was very energetic, hardworking, and bright, just everything that you would want in a student. And he got involved in Project Icarus. And so they're looking very seriously what would be required for a mission to one of the nearest stars. And so what I did was look at a model that I didn't invent this model. This is something that's been published, but basically look at what it would take to go to Alpha Centauri. And while we're at it, let's take a look at some of the other star systems that we know have habitable planets that are nearby. So I think one of them was Tau Ceti. I'm forgetting it. I think it was Tau Ceti, and there was like Gliese 55 or 59 or something. And these are planets within about 10 light years. It takes an enormous amount of fuel to get to another star within 50 years. What we found out is it's just right at the edge of what we could possibly do with a fusion propulsion system. And if you relax that to 100 years, it actually starts to be a little bit easier to do. So what I found is that it's maybe not possible to do with conventional heat something up and throw it out the exhaust nozzle approach to propulsion. It may be possible, but it's just at the ragged edge of our technology.
Interesting. How is now Alpha Centauri? Is that what a lot of scientists believe is a planet that could sustain life like Earth? Do they believe that it's very similar to our Earth, or do you believe that?
Actually, I'm not aware of planets in that system. So that's actually a three-star system. So Alpha Centauri, let's see, Beta, and what are they called? There's three of them there. and there's Proxima, which is the closest one to it, and it's about a quarter of a light year away from the other two, which is basically a binary star system. And I'm actually not aware if they've confirmed any planets around any of those three systems. So it's the closest star, but it may not actually have any planets in it.
Right, but it's a good possibility that there may be. The conditions are right, maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was something flying around, one of those systems. It would seem kind of highly unlikely, I would think, but I really don't know. But what I do know is that we have, within a factor of 2 of that system, other planets that have confirmed Earth-like planets in the habitable zone around them. So in our neighborhood, we have some intriguing possibilities, if not Alpha Centauri.
Gotcha. Got a couple other great questions for you here. This is Carl writes in, a different Carl writes in, says, what about solar sails? Are they practical, wishful thinking? Do they take too much time? Any thought on using like a solar sail technology for getting us from place to place?
So solar sails have kind of gone from fringe to real possibility because of advances in material technologies. And there are some people within NASA that are experts in this area and seem to think that this is a very doable system. So it takes advantage of catching, I guess, impulse from, I guess, sunlight and maybe the solar wind. And the hard part is how you unfurl a sail that has to have a size of maybe a few kilometers on each edge and not suffer degradation or tearing or whatever. So I think deploying it is the biggest challenge. But but if you can do it, you can get some tremendous accelerations out of these systems. You can travel at something like 1 AU a month, and AU is an astronomical unit, the distance between the sun to the Earth, and you can get hauling pretty fast if you start from the right spot with these things. So I think they're very useful for that. Problem is that they're just so large that I shouldn't think this way, but for me the challenge there is how would this be practical for humans to travel around, because you would want a system that's robust, and I don't know if you can turn around and go back towards the sun with it.
Right.
And plus it's going to get holes knocked in it because there's lots of debris in space, and anything with that huge of a cross section is going to get hit with debris all over the place. So, but I mean, there's certainly niche applications for just about all these ideas that are out there.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Jamie is a engineering student. She just sent an email, and she's an engineering student up at the University of Utah. Mm-hmm. And she says, Dr. Cassibry, this maybe sound crazy, but could your propulsion system be retrofitted into something like the International Space Station and turn something like that into a starcraft?
That's an interesting thought. I don't know that the space station itself is equipped in the right way to turn it into a... Well, I mean, I guess why couldn't you just push it that way?
Right.
But it probably has weird structural dynamics in it that wouldn't put up with just pushing it somewhere. But there's certainly been thought of assembling a large vehicle docked to the space station, and so while it's being put together, people have a place to live, and then it's tugged away to a safe location where it then fires up its rockets to take off. Actually, Jamie, now that I think about it, this mission didn't go ahead for some reason, but for a while, Franklin Chang Diaz, who led this propulsion effort called VASMIR, was looking at actually testing VASMIR on the space station. It was going to be a 300 kilowatt propulsion system, which uses just about all the power the space station has, and test it in low Earth orbit. and that would have been used as a way to basically do the station keeping for the space station, and so in a way that's almost like what she's talking about. But for some reason, that mission fell through. That was supposed to happen last year, and I don't know exactly the details surrounding why it didn't happen.
Well, you know, with the space station, Jason, is it? I mean, my understanding, and I'm talking way out of element here because I don't have the knowledge, but I mean, there's really no forces in. I mean, why wouldn't the ISS? Why couldn't something like that be used as a spacecraft to go to Mars and put it into a Mars type of orbit? Is there structural requirements, even though there's no? I mean, you know, my understanding is if you give it a push, it's going to go. But are there still structural engineering things that need to be taken into account before you mount an engine like you're developing on it so it doesn't tear it to pieces? Is that what it's more about?
Well, I have to admit that I'm answering a question that I only know a little bit about. So that would, it would really require somebody that does that professionally to properly answer the question. But in order to get it out of orbit, you would probably have to do sort of a gentle spiral that took you around the Earth 5 or 10 times at least, and then send it out. So it would definitely have to be a softer push because it wasn't designed for rapid acceleration. So the stress on the connection between the nodes and the weird shaking and dynamic modes that might be generated, because it's a big, giant, flimsy thing, that wasn't designed to do that, it probably... I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, it's just that it wasn't designed for that, and it might be better and more desirable to just build something new that is designed for that kind of a thing. But it's definitely an interesting idea. It's already there.
Right.
People can live in it. Why not use it that way?
Sure. Sure. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Jason, the 2 hours has gone way too fast. We would love to get you back on. I hope I can get you back on down the road here and talk about more of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I would certainly love to do that. We're working very hard at the University of Alabama in Huntsville to get our pulse power machine operational, and in the meantime, I think we're looking at smaller scale experiments. So we're hoping to make some neutrons and generate some energy from the same source that powers the sun here very soon to help take us to planets within the solar system. So we're very excited, and I'm extremely honored and flattered that you would find me interesting enough to fill 2 hours of your show.
Oh no, and, I mean we could go for another two. It's just, again, it's to talk to someone like yourself who is doing it. I mean, this is the Star Trek stuff that's becoming reality, and it's the great minds like yourself and all the work and time that you put in to study to be where you are today. My hat's off to you. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment, and not many people can do this, and it's people like you that are going to take us into the future.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're actually, to reference Star Wars, we're building the impulse engine. So not the warp drive, but the impulse engine. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you go. Get back to your wife so she don't kill you. And again, it was an honor to talk with you and be so open-minded about all these subjects. We'll stay in touch, and I'd love to get you back on again.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, have a great weekend, Jason. Good night and take care. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye-bye.